We are back like we never left, guys. This is the No Trade Clause broadcast live from SBC Studio at 2021 Summer League. Glad to be back with you guys. This time around, our special guest here is Nick Lagios. If I botched that, Nick, my bad.
I'm used 31 years. I've been used to it. No, that was good enough.
That's a great way to start off the broadcast, right?
You're good.
So he'll be taking over as the general manager of the Mexico City Capitanes. And congratulations, Nick, on that position. That's a really cool opportunity.
Thank you.
We're glad you took the time to join us on set in your busy schedule. So, you were selected to lead this team into the inaugural season in the G League. So, to start off, man, how does it feel to be part of such a groundbreaking experience, just kind of treading new ground in the G League and in the NBA in general?
Yeah, it's honestly an honor. Once I heard about the team 3 years ago, I was like, I want that job, and I'm going to do everything I could do to prepare myself. And Nick Mazzella, my former boss with South Bay, was awesome. Joey Buss, and they really prepared me to be a GM probably 2 years ago, but COVID happened. But it's an honor, and I thought I was going to be a little more nervous and scared and what to do now. But after working in the G League for 5 years, I feel like I know it, and I'm ready, and we have a good team around us, so I'm excited to get going.
Sweet, man. We're glad to hear that. So to kind of start off, I want to go back to some of your earlier experiences in your career. So in particular, you were breaking down film for the Australian men's national team previously during the Rio Olympics in 2016. You also did that for the South Bay Lakers and the Los Angeles Lakers. So, some of the greatest minds in the game, like Eric Spoelstra, started in the video room, and that's where they got their start, rising up through the ranks. It seems like you're doing something similar here. So we were just curious, what was it like kind of grinding in the background without much fanfare, without much recognition? How does that background kind of build the foundation for the skills and experience that you bring now to a position as a general manager? I
think now as I'm at this role, I've done every role up, besides being a head coach, I've done all the roles. So whenever I'm asking our video coordinator or intern or assistant coach for something, it's like I've done this and I understand that, and I've literally lived their life so I can relate with them. Mm-hmm. I think that helps you connect with your staff. But in terms of actual basketball IQ, if you're a video coordinator, you're watching more basketball than you probably want to watch. So I used to code games half asleep because they would end at 11, and I'm just 11-1, just typing away,
Yeah.
But you watch it all. It's good for a couple years, but I'm glad that I was able to transition over to the front office side for sure. This was always the goal.
Perfect, man. And we were talking about just how you can kind of relate to people coming behind you now that you've had that experience. I'm sure that's really nice for people that are kind of starting where you started.
Yeah.
They have somebody to talk to, that's in a position that's, pretty important today, but you do have that background, so they know that there's someone they connect with, someone that kind of shows them the ropes, and when they're trying to kind of move up and, maybe secure themselves a little bit more pay down the road or something like that, they could come and talk to you and kind of figure out exactly kind of what it takes to be in a position like that in the G League. So I'm sure that's really cool for them, the people that are coming up behind you, trying to get a start similar to like you did.
Absolutely, and just, with guys at Sports Business Classroom or anyone here at Summer League who's trying to break in, I was nothing special, not really good at basketball, not a great student. So, if I'm able to just basically through hard work and determination, if I'm able to do it, anyone can do it.
Right.
You guys can be on ESPN or NBC, whatever. As time goes on, it just keep working and stuff happens.
The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So during much of your tenure with the South Bay and the Lakers, the team struggled to field a winning roster and toiled in the lottery for multiple years. Did you find that your scope of the job changed all through the losing phase in your current era, featuring championship runs and it being fueled by superstars?
Absolutely. The first couple years, there's a lot more younger players. So with South Bay, we had more assignment players. There wasn't two ways yet. So. Yeah, we had, I don't know, it wasn't more of a Laker connection, but in terms of the G League and NBA, that's changed a lot, but that's a whole other story. Yeah. But it did change, and just the culture changed. We switched buildings to a brand new facility, and that's not why we started to win, but they called it Lakers 2.0, and we kind of restarted, and thankfully we were able to start winning. And the Staples Center really changed because it was just a library there for a couple of years, and now it's back alive, and that was a massive difference. But in terms of rebounding in my life, it was it's more or less the same. But yeah, no, it's good that they're back on track.
So, just quick follow-up. You touched on working with young players and your position with the South Bay Lakers as director of basketball operations and player development. I've always been curious as an aspiring agent. How does a plan for a team, a player development plan for a team, how do they work with a possible player's agent, or excuse me, a trainer,
Right.
that his personal trainer? Do they work together? Do they come together with a plan? Or is it more like side-by-side parallel work?
That's a great question, and I think there's good examples and bad examples of what can happen. I think ideally you want to be working with the trainer, because a lot of times the trainer will be working on things that the coach won't necessarily want. So you want to be on the same page ideally. Not sure it always happens, but the trainer just wants the best of their client and their player. You can't blame them for teaching them a crossover when they probably shouldn't do it. But yeah, ideally there's communication. I know some teams definitely try to do that.
For sure.
But we had with South Bay our coaches were awesome, assistant coaches, and they would always work them out, and they were there at midnight, whenever the players want to get shots up. So thankfully we had an awesome staff with that.
Awesome.
Really cool, man. So it seems like as though sometimes that the Los Angeles Lakers can stumble into success due to their status as being a team from LA, being a team in California. I wanted to kind of ask you about this because you worked a lot with G League players and guys trying to come up and make that team. Do you find any truth to that speculation, or do the Lakers really deserve some credit as far as how they mined the gems in the G League and found young talent through unconventional methods, through guys that are undrafted, or went through the G League, or some other avenue that doesn't involve being like a lottery pick coming up through the ranks of college and NBA?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of it is Los Angeles, it's the Lakers, it's maybe one of top 5 most famous sports brand in the world. So there's always that, whether they're winning or losing, it's just the Lakers. But then also our scouting department with the Lakers and South Bay Lakers, we've maximized as much as we could do, like our second round picks, undrafted guys. A lot of those guys are either two-ways or NBA players in other teams. So I really think we did a great job on maximizing the end of the bench with Lakers. And then sure enough, Caruso starts game 6, and he's undrafted, played a year in the G League. So that's what you have to do.
Yeah, for sure. And you spent time with the players, I'm sure, with the Lakers, South Bay. You've kind of seen both sides of the coin. So, were there any differences, really big differences that stand out to you between working with the Tier 1 franchise and the Tier 2, anything you enjoyed more or less about working with the G League as opposed to the Lakers or vice versa? Yeah,
what's really interesting is the Lakers, like a practice or anything, is like a massive production. There's just so many people involved. There's, when they fly, there's like 60 people or something. That's just normal in the NBA. It's just a bigger thing.
Sure.
And I just loved with the G League, still do love how it's such a small staff. It's like a college staff. You might have like 10 total. So you really get to know, it's not even like coworkers, like my friends who don't work in sports are like, that's kind of weird. Like, why are you going over to like your, the coach's house? Like, dude, we're like brothers. Like, I've worked and like lived and eaten. Like, we've gone to random casinos here for 4 or 5 straight years. So
nice.
It's that's the part I love about the G League. You still get that in the NBA. Obviously, I have personal connections, but
for sure,
it's just fun when it's just a small group in the G League.
I can attest to that. Going through college, I think those smaller class sizes that you're a part of is really cool. You can get intimate with the professor. Even in G League here at this campus, this facility, I think a lot of us enjoy being at like Cox Pavilion as opposed to being at Thomas and Mack sometimes, because you feel like, oh, I'm 2 feet away from John Moran, or Dylan Brooks is right across the way, instead of being like in an open arena with like thousands of people, and you kind of feel a little bit detached sometimes through the experience. So that's a great point.
Absolutely, and everyone thinks people from the G League want to jump to the NBA, and I think just now it's starting to switch where it's not necessarily that. And a lot of people ask me like, oh, like you can get up to the NBA someday? It's like, I'm not really in a rush. Also, like, in the G League, you get to do so many different roles. So if you're trying to gain experience and really challenge yourself, the G League's a great place to be. You're not just, there's like 60 people in basketball ops, I think, at the NBA. We're going to have like 7, maybe with Capitanis. So you get to do a lot. And I think as like a young executive, that's what you want to be doing at this point in my career.
As mentioned earlier this season, the G League will welcome in a brand new G League franchise based out of Mexico City. Could you give some insight into how players will be selected and introduced to that team for the first season? Does the G League have an expansion draft, or does it work a bit differently?
Yeah, so we're already working on the roster, and our board and the G League, we want Latin American players on our team. That's the goal. So it's going to be a 12-man roster. We're looking to have like 7 or 8 or so Latin American players. We definitely want to have a good Mexican player on our team. And it's fun to do this. I haven't looked, obviously with South Bay, I'm looking at people from all over the world, but now I'm really focusing in on the Latin American players, and there's a lot of talent. A lot of them go to Europe, and hopefully we can get some of those younger guys to come to the G League and then hopefully they can get to the NBA rather than going over to Spain and Turkey.
Sure.
But that's going to be the challenge, and I think it's going to be fun, and I think it'll be successful too. In terms of expansion draft, they're still figuring out details in terms of, what the G League season's looking like, but we'll welcome anything. But for sure, we will have USA guys, but we're going to focus on having some Latin American players to just try and grow the sport in the entire region.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that part of it, working in a franchise that's breaking new ground in a whole new country. It's something that the NBA hasn't really been a part of before. So you talked about reaching into a different demographic, a different a different part of culture. That's really cool to expand the international influence that the NBA already has. Absolutely. So, they are based out of another country. I know you can't give details about the scheduling, so to speak, right now. I know some things are still being ironed out, but is there anything you can tell us about how this team might be run differently, or operations might be a little bit different compared to the other G League franchises that are based in the USA?
Well, the most obvious one is we don't have an NBA team, so we're not going to have assignment players. We're not going to have two ways, so we'll have a lot of continuity, which helps because, with other G League teams, you go in and you don't know who's on your team. But you also don't know who's on the other team. It's kind of a guessing game until, you're on the court.
Right.
So that'll help us, but that's also can be tough, too, because sometimes assignment players hurt the team, but a lot of times they really help the team, and generally two ways are just really good G League players, and we won't have those. But we'll obviously try our best, and continuity and team chemistry, we're just going to have to live with that.
For sure.
Absolutely. As you prepare to take over as a general manager, what are your initial goals for this team, and how do you plan to build the foundation of the core? Are there any particular characteristics or skill sets or skills in general that the players possess that you will be looking to add first?
I think, long-term goal is we want to be the pipeline for Latin American players to the NBA. The pipeline now, they're going over to Europe or maybe playing in their league, but if we can get those guys to the NBA, more like Juan Toscano, stories like that, it's absolutely possible. And it'd be an honor if our organization could do that.
I think of teams that entered the NBA somewhat recently. Back in 1988, for example, the Miami Heat entered the league as a new team, and they really struggled out of the gate. They were just trying to build the foundation of their team. They were trying to figure out exactly what kind of identity they wanted to have, bring in the leadership to really lead the team to a winning culture, a winning environment. So do you have any kind of timeline in mind as far as when you would like to see this team compete, maybe enter the playoff race, be a contender? I'm sure that's going to take some time, and you have to deal with building the foundation, kind of like Lee touched on previously, as far as what you're looking for first. But are you going to try to just be like, okay, after year 2 or 3, we really want to be a winning franchise? What is that going to look like for you as far as a timeline?
Yeah, and the G League moves fast. So fortunately, last 5 years, G League's changed a ridiculous amount. So that's good for us, and that we can get better really quick. Not that we're bad, but I think year 1 and 2 is just being competitive. We have no returning rights. So, what that means is we don't really know how a lot of these guys will do in the G League versus other teams. They were in the G League last 2 years. They averaged 20 points a game. We have a 20-point-a-game scorer. So we don't have that, and that's just the way it is. But that's how this stuff works. But year 2, 3, hopefully we start getting some guys who are getting looks at the NBA, getting call up, get a two-way. And then year 4, 5, I hope it's a spot where NBA scouts are coming to and checking out our talent. And I hope that can happen, and I think it can happen.
Absolutely.
We touched on earlier about the fact that it's going to be a close-knit group with a lot of continuity. I'm sure it's going to help a lot when you're trying to implement different play styles and things like that. When it comes to building out this team, let's say it's 2 or 3 years down the road. So it's you have some players, you have a foundation, you have those core guys. Some GMs are a little more aggressive in building their team. Are you going to take that kind of conservative approach, at least out of the gate, as far as how you want the roster to look? Is there going to be a point maybe down the road that you're going to say, okay, let's really go out and kind of make some deals and try to get, more talent in the team? Have you thought about that at all as far as maybe down the road a little bit?
I have. We do, I want to be competitive this first year. That's just important, I think, for everyone. Anytime you have a new team, at the same time, I'm going to work very closely with our head coach, Ramon Diaz. He was head coach of the Capitanes when they're in the Mexican League, and now he's head coach of them when they're in G League. He's been awesome. And we have, again, as I talked about, a small staff, so there's sometimes you might get a division between a head coach and front office and blah, 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 but we're going to have 0% of that and be on the same page about the players, the team, and the vision. So, but But in terms of getting big players, I mean, hopefully it happens year one. I'm definitely going to go for it, but I want to make sure that Ramon Diaz is on page with this player, and hopefully we can work together on that.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, man. And one last question, at least that I have for you, what kind of leash is going to be there for people that are working under you, players? Like, I know it's going to be a process kind of starting this thing out, but are you going to be one of those guys that says, like, hey, let's just work through this. It's going to be stumbling blocks. Let's just let these guys make their mistakes. Or, do you think you might be a little more, put your foot down a little bit more to kind of get the train rolling if things are not looking great? Like, how long of a leash are you looking to kind of give these guys that are working in and around the organization, at least in the first few years?
Well, it's anytime you're starting anything, whether it's a company or team, this isn't a brand new team, but there is growing pains sometimes, and we're switching leagues. Ramon's never coached in the G League, so this is like Spanish basketball versus U.S. basketball versus Mexican basketball. It's all different. So, yeah, I mean, growing pains will happen, and the leash, I guess, is going to be pretty big. But, if there's things that we can control, like picking up a team from the airport or getting the scout done or doing our best in practice, then obviously I'd be annoyed, and because we can control that. But if it's
right.
like things that we don't know and things that are new, there's always struggles. But even me, I'll mess up for sure. Like, I've never been a GM, and there's some rules I don't fully understand yet, and I will mess up, and everyone messes up. But so I hope my leash is like long too. But
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I hear that, man.
So you touched on player development and how a trainer and a player development staff or a team might work together. But I was wondering, what is a relationship like with a GM and also an agent? How often do they talk? What are those conversations like? Obviously you don't have to spill the beans and go into the details, but how often is that communication like?
I think what's interesting is there was always like perception that agents are like annoying or whatever. I don't know. They're like salespeople,
Yeah.
But they just want the best of their client, and if I was an agent, I'd be really annoying probably. I want the best of my client. I want them to get paid the most, have a great opportunity for them, their family. So my relationship with agents is I'm just like understanding of that, and obviously they may be unhappy with me sometimes, and I may be unhappy with them, but that's how like business and life works.
Yeah.
But here, I'm meeting a lot of agents in person. It's much better than with text, and with a couple of them, I'm friends. Yeah, there's like nothing really weird about it, and like we know when we're talking about players that it's like that's a business type thing. I'll be completely honest with them. I'm not gonna like lie to a friend. So, I think the perception is that maybe they're a little bit more separate than they are, but I think reality is like agents and GMs talk every day. I mean, you talk to them more than my family sometimes. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Well, I think that brings us to the conclusion of another discussion. Nick, thanks so much again for your time, and congratulations again on this position. It's really cool to see somebody kind of started, in the lower ranks of this league and the NBA in general, kind of rise up and share in what it takes to kind of really kind of strive for the top. So that's really cool, and we wish you the best in your future endeavors, man.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Appreciate it, man.
So we'll be back. We have a couple more broadcasts available for you guys to check out here at Summer League. So until next time, we're going to sign out here. NTC, we'll be back at you guys next time live from Summer League. So take care. We'll see you soon.